Well, this is pretty exciting. I've been looking forward to this session for so long. Some of you might be even familiar with Jack Kafoa, one of the CareerTrackers alumni, and really ultimate legends, I think. Certainly a role model in engineering who works at GHD that's here to facilitate this session. And joining him is actually his manager and mentor. Not only that has been the case since he graduated uni, but even before then, Jon Williams, an incredibly experienced professional and engineer. And I'm so grateful that the two of them have joined this, and then all of you have dialed in for it. I'm not going to say all that much more, but instead hand it over to Jack. But I'd like you to do is, if at the moment you could just chuck in the chat, and this will be really great for both Jack and Jon before they commence, is if you can chuck in the chat, just introduce yourself, your name, your mob, what you're studying. I know that many of you are studying different types of engineering. And also, if you are already working in your internship, which company you work for. So go ahead and chuck that in the chat. If you could just introduce yourself in that way, that would be really great. And please, please, please don't hesitate to chuck in the chat any questions that you have, any topics that you'd like to see addressed throughout the call, and the guys will address them either when you bring it up, or they'll address it right at the end. We want to make sure that you get questions and things covered in this session. Thank you so much. And again, please introduce yourself in the chat and introduce what type of engineering and what companies that you're all working for. Jack, I'm going to hand it over to you. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Adam. I think I'll just ask quickly if anyone's got their microphone, or just to mute it. With some of the background noise, obviously.
I can auto mute everyone.
Oh, there we go. Just don't mute me or Jon.
Hey.
All right. Cool. So hopefully everyone can hear me, and Jon's there as well. So we'll get started. So I can see everyone's putting their introductions in for me and Jon, so that's awesome. Cool. So I guess starting. My name's Jack Kafoa. I'm a Bundjalung man from northern New South Wales, and obviously here today to, I guess, give a summary or professional masterclass in engineering. I'm certainly no expert, but I'm sure I can give some wise examples or experience in my short 6 years. And I've got Jon with me who will also be able to provide some insights. Jon, if you just want to give a quick intro of yourself.
Yeah, afternoon everyone. Apologies, I'm on a construction site up the Sunshine Coast, and our internet's really dodgy up here, so I'm probably not even able to use my camera at the moment. It's dropping in and out, so you'll have to bear with me. Yeah, apologies. I've been with GHD nearly 25 or over 25 years, and have 30 years experience in dams engineering. I'm originally from a small town in New Zealand, so also equally proud of my heritage, a long-term Kiwi family. So, afternoon, everyone.
Thanks, Jon. And I guess before we get into it, I just want to acknowledge the country in which we're all gathering here today. Myself, I'm in Brisbane, so it's the Yuggera and Turrbal people. And just want to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. All right, so just running through the agenda for today. So we'll run through some introductions, sort of background around myself and Jon, and we'll get into, I guess, the question of what is engineering. And I know probably a lot of you are already studying engineering, or you may be looking to do engineering, or it may be an interest of yours. So I guess just want to pose some questions there and get you thinking about it. The next one, which is a good one, why is the profession important and where is it going? I think there's a couple of good sort of things we can explore there. Barriers to success in the profession. That's an interesting one because, look, it's something that you face as a graduate, and even when you get into the industry, there's challenges all the time. So we can talk a bit about that. Ingredients for excellence in the profession. So I guess we'll run through what would you look for in an engineer, and I suppose what are the attributes and skills and things that you would probably want to have or lean towards to excel. And then obviously, how a student can accelerate success. So maybe a couple of tips and past experience that I've had that's got me to where I am. But it's just sort of sharing our, like Jon and I's experiences. And then at the end, we'll have a question and answer. So what we might do when we get to that is either, depending on how many people have questions, either get people to, I guess, talk through their questions, or we'll just use the chat function, but we'll work that out at the end. So introductions. So obviously Jack Kafoa. So I'm a senior engineer in the dams team in Brisbane here for GHD. I'm about 6 years experience now. And I guess, yeah, just thinking back on, oh, sorry, I'll just introduce Jon first. So there you go, Jon. Jon, if your mic's working. Anyway, I'll keep going. So he's, well, like he said, 30 years experience. I probably got that wrong by 1 year. It's probably been a year since we last talked about it. I suppose I'll jump in though to my story. I sort of want to think back to where I first thought about engineering. It was probably back in high school. I thought, what am I going to do? Do I want to go to university? What do I want to do after school? And I guess university was something I was sort of leaning towards, and I liked problem solving. I enjoyed mathematics, wasn't too good at it at the time, still probably not. I did like physics and stuff, but it was always a challenge for me because I was pretty much entrenched in playing rugby league. Went to a rugby league type of high school. We won multiple premierships for the school, and it was actually like a subject. So I was very much into that, but until I injured my knee around year 11, and I was, still enrolled in my science subjects and mathematics because I always had an interest, but I really just started delving into those once I basically couldn't play properly anymore, which was fine. I'm grateful for that experience anyway, because it's really got me to where I am today as well. But I guess thinking through high school, I think back to how I got to Griffith University. I actually did a program in my final 2 years where you sort of complete a first year subject for engineering with Griffith. So I'd go up there like every week on the Gold Coast, and basically it was once a week in the afternoon would sort of complete a half day's worth of the subject with a lecturer there. I did that over 2 years, and basically when it got to end of high school, I was sort of completed one subject already and had sort of entry to the Bachelor of Engineering, which was awesome. And after doing that, I was fortunate to be able to do that program because I figured out whether I'd actually enjoy it or not. And it was a good start, but there was obviously challenges going into university. And so, yeah, after that was student at Griffith University on the Gold Coast. And that was probably the most challenging period of schooling. Obviously, university is a bit of a change. And first year I seemed to be okay, but then as I got into the second, third year, I really struggled and started failing a lot of subjects. Just didn't have the right focus, and started to doubt myself actually. So I guess I just wanted to share that with everyone. I guess who's attending today is, I wasn't like a straight A student or anything. I did have sort of a passion though for problem solving. I sort of built off that. But one of the things I learned from uni was to not give up. I think that was one of the main things, because I did face moments where I thought maybe I can't actually do this, like maybe I'm not smart enough to actually do engineering. And so I've sort of made an ultimatum to myself after I'd failed a couple years in a row, multiple subjects. I basically said, all right, I'll put all my energy into this, and if I fail then that means I definitely cannot do it because I must be limited or something. But basically at that point, after doing that, everything was almost a high distinction from there. So it was a turning point for me, I guess, realizing that it's about how much energy you put into it. And that's what will, I guess, push your success. And yeah, looking at the end of the degree, I think it was the second last year, I heard about CareerTrackers, and I went along to, find out what they're about and what they do. And I found them to be really valuable in transitioning from university to the workforce. It's building the skills for like interviews, the office environment, but it wasn't just that, it was also building the confidence to have that going into the workforce. I think that was a huge one for me as well, because I'd never really worked in an office, had no idea what it would be like to be in consulting. So they were all, I guess I'm really appreciative of CareerTrackers' support and help there with just, really helping to transition into the work life. And then obviously now, I think this was back in 2013 and 2014. where I did an internship with GHD. And from there, that was over a 12-week period. I think it was successful, and I had my final year of uni after that, finished university and graduated in 2015, and started as a graduate with GHD. So it's been 5.5 years or so now, full time with GHD. And John, I want to pass to you. I'd like to get you to explain sort of your career development as well, and where your journey, I suppose, if you could. If your microphone is not muted, John.
I think John's actually in the process of reconnecting.
Okay.
Yeah, move on to the next.
That's all right. I'll move on. All good. But I guess
Jack,
he's here.
I'm good. I've actually had to move outside, so I'm sitting on a park bench overlooking the dam on the construction site. So apologies, everyone, for this. I want to reflect on Jack's internship. I saw a young man who joined us. As Jack said, he was quite uncertain about working in an office. But we're all people too, and we all come from very diverse backgrounds. In GHD and engineering, weirdly, being an Australian, you're in the minority. We had a young fella join us, and he had his head and his heart in the right place. He did really well, and for us, it was an absolute no-brainer to have Jack join our team. So, look, I think the CareerTrackers process is an excellent one, and it gives people like Jack the opportunity to be real, show themselves, and for senior engineers like myself to say, yeah, this is the person I want to work with. So look, 10 out of 10 for CareerTrackers on that. My journey, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, I grew up in a small town. I had to leave home at 17 to go to uni, and it's an experience I know a number of you are probably going through as well, and that's really quite confronting. That adds to the stress. I then did my degree in Auckland University and then went to work for Hydro Engineering, actually the Ministry of Works, the New Zealand Government Hydro Engineering Group. So I've had a great career in that sense, and I think if you take your career with the mindset of I will take these opportunities even if they're a little bit scary, that you really can see the world and see some amazing projects. And as engineers, I think that's one of the mindsets we have around, we really like to see stuff built. We really like the practical aspects, and for me it's been starting out working for the New Zealand government, and then 25 years ago joining GHD in the dams group, and with GHD I've worked around the world in Malaysia, Oman, Colombia, and just having mentors in the business that allows you to get some courage. That's a key, and having the courage as well to go, yeah, I'm gonna leave home and go to uni. I'm gonna move to a mine site in central Queensland and give it a go. That's probably the key lessons I've learned over 29 years in the business.
Thanks, John. Yeah, and I guess just touching on why engineering, and I think back to, I guess it goes back to my thoughts when I was younger, and I always enjoyed problem solving, but I used to look and see like those big projects you'd see on like the documentaries, like Discovery Channel and stuff, and you'd have like the Burj Khalifa, which is like the tallest building in the world in the Middle East, and I used to think, how could someone design and build that? I just thought it was just unbelievable, and I thought I really want to get involved in that, which is quite funny because you think, how would you ever get involved in something like that? But you come to realize that projects like that are it's not a one-man band, it's teams of hundreds of people usually in multiple disciplines, and it actually, the more you dive into it though, the more exciting it becomes because it's so complex, yet what you can end up creating together is quite amazing. And but that scales down to the lowest, to the smaller stuff too, and it allows you to actually go out and I guess, do things for your community. And I guess that's something that I guess in the future I'll be looking to do. I mean, I'm still building my own skills, and but I mean, everything we do is always helping our communities. But yeah, I guess it just becomes more specific as you gain more experience. I just wanted to share some of the photos from projects that I'm actually working on at the moment. I've got some for Jon that he's worked on in the past on the next slide, but I guess on this one, just looking on the left side there, so that's Leslie Harrison Dam on the bottom left-hand corner, which we, GHD did the design and upgrade for back in 2018. So that was from 2018 to 2019, we had 12 months of construction, which was basically a whole lot of earthworks on the downstream side. There was a replacement of a concrete conduit and new access shafts that were buried. And then in the spillway, we did some anchoring works and stabilization to keep the spillway there to the rock. It was quite a complex project, but it was actually really successful. And it was my sort of first big site role for, a large dam upgrade. Probably not the biggest dam in the world, but it was quite a complex upgrade, which was great experience. And just in the top middle there, you can see there's a bridge. So there's a bit of random stuff that we get to do. This is just why I like the dams world of engineering. I got to design this 45 meter spanning truss bridge, which basically had like an access walkway and a pipeline. I did that under the guidance of our lead structural engineer, who's the RPEQ for that, which is, if none of you are aware, registered professional engineer of Queensland. So anything that's designed in Queensland or designed from Queensland is required to be certified by an RPEQ. So that's something that Jon's an RPEQ, and is actually, his name is on, for example, Leslie Harrison Dam there on the left, and other projects that we work on. Down in the middle centre is North Pine Dam, which is north of Brisbane. I'm currently working on that project with our team, and we're looking at sort of dam safety upgrade options there. Is an exciting project, but yeah, looking into the sort of options and things we might be doing there is quite exciting. And on the right side is probably the big one, that's Wivenhoe Dam. So that's the main water supply for Brisbane. So that dam's quite a large structure. There's multiple components to it, embankments, there's a gated spillway. Those gates there that you can see are, I think, roughly 16 meters high. Very large radial gates that, quite a feat of engineering there, I think. And these were constructed back in the, I think, 80s. And there's also another auxiliary spillway on that dam as well. So we're looking at dam safety upgrade options there. And I'm fortunate enough to be the project manager for that for GHD. So it's been quite a challenge and quite a rewarding project so far. And it's still going for a few years now. And there'll be further phases into the future. But yeah, that's probably the one I'm most excited about. And Jon, I might just let you comment on some of these projects that you've worked on.
Sure, thanks, Jack. The centre one there with the river and the partly completed dam is the project I worked on at a university nearly 30 years ago. It's Clyde Dam in New Zealand. Got to work for some really talented people there. It was people from all around the world, and learnt a lot of skills. And the one on the two pictures on the right is a dam I both was the lead designer for and then was on site in Malaysia. It's 90 metres high. There's 1 million cubic metres of concrete in it. So that was a career highlight. And the one on the three photographs on the left, I only was on site for a very short time, but that was in Colombia in South America. And that was the highest roller compacted concrete dam in the world at the time, 189 metres high. I was sent over there to help do some concrete mix designs and set up the QA system, and I rate that as a career highlight, working on the highest dam of its type. And also, massive mix of cultures. Those international projects, we had a Brazilian contractor on a Colombian site with American expertise and Australian specialists. It was, fascinating job. And the scale has to be seen to be believed. Nearly 200 metres high. It's a very long way down when you're looking down the abutment. So I think that's probably it from my sort of career highlights. Jack, you want to
Yeah.
you've got a few tips and techniques to talk about?
I guess just on what we're showing there, I mean, John, that's only a small piece of your experience. I guess there's been a lot of projects that you're still involved in and have done. So I think those three were a good highlight, though, just to show the scale of some of the work that you've actually been involved in is quite amazing, actually. So I guess it's something for other, everyone in this call is if that's something that you're looking forward to. I mean, that's like, as you see, John, he's obviously, sought for his career to go in that direction and work on these major projects, and it's something you're interested in. I mean, it just shows the possibilities, and it's quite cool to see that there's people that you actually know who work on these types of things. Because I always, thinking back to when I saw the documentaries and thought, how would you even know someone who gets to work on a major project like that? So I just thought it'd be good to share with everyone.
Yeah, well, I guess Jack, it shows that when you're at school, the town I was in, it was lots of farmers and logging workers, and not many people went beyond year 10. I would have never dreamt to have worked on those sort of projects, and I had people encourage me, as Jack knows, I'll throw all of my effort behind my younger colleagues to help them grow their careers, and you'll meet a lot of people out there. Engineering is like that. We love to help each other, and it's if you get a real buzz out of the technical aspects of what you do, you never know where that's going to take you. That's for sure.
Yeah, thanks, John. And I guess I've just noticed there's a few questions coming in the group chat. Yeah, we'll address them. We will have a look at them at the end, so we won't forget about you guys. So I guess, what is engineering? Engineering is the use of scientific principles to design and build machines, structures, and other items such as bridges, tunnels, roads, vehicles, and buildings. Wikipedia. Not very exciting. Well, kind of exciting, but very plain description. But I think there's some other more interesting quotes from, I guess, some famous people throughout time. I like some of these ones. So scientists investigate that which already is, and engineers create that which has never been. Albert Einstein, mathematician and physicist. I've been impressed with the urgency of doing. Knowing is not enough, we must apply. Being willing is not enough, we must do. Leonardo da Vinci, artist and engineer. Scientists study the world as it is. Engineers create the world that has never been. Theodore von Karman, mathematician, aerospace engineer, and physicist. So I'm not trying to bash scientists here. All I'm trying to show is that, there's obviously, engineering is really the application of the science that we really have been developing, and it's creating things that, I guess science is the observation, and I guess engineering is the practical application of that. So I find that to be, as a problem solver that I've sort of shared with you guys, that's what I find exciting about engineering, and I think that's what engineering really is. It's really working off the back of science, really, and trying to apply that. So I guess just to run through the fields of engineering now, I, myself and John are civil engineers. So when it comes to some of the other ones there, we probably aren't that qualified to talk too much about it, but I'll run through the fields that we've sort of got there. And it's sort of the sub-disciplines that apply to those. But obviously we have the main ones: civil, mechanical, electrical, computer, chemical. There's others. So I guess sub-disciplines, I mean, civil, you have hydraulics and hydrology. So there's, water flow, there's catchments, rainfall, estimating flooding or estimating flows, etc. So that's all a huge part of civil engineering. There's obviously structural. So you've got concrete structures, steel structures, buildings, goes on and on and on. Transportation, you've got roads, vehicles, traffic. That's obviously a major industry across the world. There's geotechnical and geology, so you've got like soils, you've got rock, exploration, foundation design, that goes on, and that's a huge part of dam engineering. And there's obviously mining as well, which is absolutely massive in Australia, one of our key economic outputs, and that's a really big market. And I guess civil is a wide or a broad field, I suppose, and you really, as you go into it, you can be tied down into more specifics. So I guess in terms of dams, that really fits under a whole range of civil sub-disciplines. I mean, you've definitely got hydraulics, hydrology, structural, you have geotechnical, geology. What else can you put in there? I mean, there's risk, which kind of falls within any engineering field. Then we also have mechanical engineers because we have gates. We have electrical engineers because we need powers and circuits. We have generators. It just goes on and on. So you can imagine, it depends what you're really working in. You'll be exposed to a lot of these, even if you're only a civil engineer or you're only a mechanical engineer. But obviously, yeah, as you go down the list, I mean, mechanical, you've got aerospace, aircraft, engines. I mean, I can't really speak for those, but they're just some of the sub-disciplines. This is by no means an exhaustive list, but I just thought it gives an idea of like a whole range of, I guess, disciplines that you could be working in if that's something you go forward to. But obviously electrical, so you've got power, circuits, telecommunications, electromagnetic, computer engineering, you've got, combination of computer science and electrical engineering as hardware, software. I mean, that's going to be already is and will be into the future an extremely important field of engineering as we move into more automation, machine learning, big data, etc. There's chemical engineering, and that ties back into mining as well. And then there's others. And I just wanted to mention planetary because I found that apparently is a new, well, I don't know if it's new, but it's a sub-discipline on how to modify a climate of a planet that you're looking to, I guess, create as a new habitat. So I thought that was pretty cool because I'm a bit of a science nerd. So I thought I'd add that one in. And I guess I also want to touch on the types of sort of business and roles that you might be involved in when you do work in any of these fields or disciplines. And just starting from the top there, you could be an owner-operator. So I've just put some examples underneath those. So for example, the Department of Transport and Main Roads, they obviously manage all of our highway infrastructure throughout Queensland. So that's actually like an owner, even though they do a lot of their own construction, but they are managing the entire network and it's their assets. So it's actually their responsibility. And obviously they find their funding, etc., through Queensland government or whatever sources, like may it be federal. And then, for example, another owner is SEQ Water. That's one of our, as GHD, it's one of our main clients that we work for. So they own and manage the assets for basically the water supply in southeast Queensland. So you've got like dams, water treatment plants, pipelines, desalination. It goes on and on and on. But basically, they manage those. And if you work in that owner/operator role, you'll be more of a project manager. Still needing technical ability, but your focus would not be necessarily on technical design, but more of managing those projects, ensuring their success, and managing consultants to get the jobs done. So moving on to consultants, I mean, that's what GHD are. We're a consultancy, so we don't do construction. We're simply basically design and consulting, which means we cover off on all the technical aspects, calculations, drawings, drafting, certification, really providing all that documentation that can be used to then construct whatever is being designed. And we also provide sort of technical services for being on site, so as like technical advisors. So not necessarily we don't actually undertake the construction, but we do provide guidance to the clients and the contractor in terms of what is the intention behind the design, and is it being constructed in accordance with the design? And that's sort of our role. And that also comes under the requirements of an RPEQ to make sure that the contractors actually construct whatever you've designed in accordance with your design intent. Another example of a consultant there is the HARC, Hydrology and Risk Consulting. They're sort of like a niche firm who we work with quite a bit actually, and they focus on hydrology and risk and provide a lot of outputs similar to what we would do for SEQ Water. They provide to us and SEQ Water. That's just an example, but there's lots of consultancies and that goes on and on and on, but I just thought I'd provide some examples. And then underneath we have contractors and construction. So you've got CPB or Lend-Lease, which some of you may be familiar or may work for, I'm not sure. So they're obviously the big contractors here in Australia, and we'll take on the contracts to construct I think usually they're the larger ones, so focus on the larger type projects, but obviously that ranges down to smaller contractors, depending on the size of the project. And then you may also look at maybe academic or research. So I know University of New South Wales, I mean, or even any of the universities, you may be doing some research there. So you may go into be, an academic and want to look into more techniques or further the field of engineering in certain aspects, or do a PhD. And there's also the CSIRO, who obviously do a lot of research as well. But I guess that just gives an idea of sort of the different roles that you might actually go into as an engineer. So how did engineering come about? So I found this one on Wikipedia because I'm not a historian, as I've mentioned to Adam. But I thought it was an interesting one because I didn't actually really think about where it came from. But yeah, the concept of engineering has existed since ancient times as humans devised fundamental inventions such as the pulley, lever, and wheel. Each of these inventions is consistent with the modern definition of engineering, exploiting basic mechanical principles to develop useful tools and objects. The term engineering itself has a much more recent etymology, deriving from the word engineer, which itself dates back to 1325, when an engineer, literally one who operates an engine, originally referred to a constructor of military engines. In this context, now obsolete, an engine referred to a military machine, i.e. a mechanical contraption used in war, for example, a catapult. The word engine itself is of even old origin, ultimately deriving from the Latin ingenium, meaning innate quality, especially mental power, hence a clever invention. So I don't know if they're trying to say that engineers are clever or something, but I'll take that. That's fine. So I guess there's something I wanted to have everyone think about for a second is, what would the world look like without engineering? Maybe just take sort of a moment to have a think about that before I sort of talk a bit more. I would say it's kind of a funny question because I feel as though most of, especially modern times, most of everything that we do is based on some sort of engineering. And I guess, yeah, talking about the now, so obviously like any form of transportation or travel has all been developed by engineers. Communications, our smartphones, the fact that we even have a network that we can talk across, obviously the internet, I mean, it's all, housing, infrastructure, bridges, roads, dams, and then our entertainment, even how we record, films or use our computers. It's all obviously been designed by someone, and it's usually, well, more than likely engineers or those who could probably consider themselves engineers. Yeah, I guess just looking at why is this profession important? So I think it's just everything that we're able to do nowadays, and actually it's, as you can see, throughout time we've had pulleys and levers as we started, and it's obviously evolved as we've gone along. Clearly wouldn't be able to do much of what we can do today without engineering. So it's really a huge part of our way of life. And just thinking about it, it's not just about designing and building new things, but it's about how do we improve what we already have as well. It's not just about always having to do something new or always creating something. It's about also improving and maintaining. And I guess just thinking into the future of what engineering will be, these are sort of buzzwords that are running around in the industry. I mean, you've got automation, artificial intelligence, information, big data, machine learning. These don't necessarily replace other parts of engineering, for example, the travel, comms, housing. They're just going to be what's added on to what we already have, and they will hugely change the industry, hugely change what we do day to day, but they're very important and they will be very powerful tools. I guess one thing is just to keep an open mind and always be willing to learn. That's part of engineering anyway, but just noting that these things are coming and they already are here. We're already using them in a lot of ways. But it's quite exciting actually if you think about it, because we're moving into a more, I guess, advanced age of engineering, but that's, it will take its time, and it depends on which industry you're in. Things move slower than others, but I think it's quite exciting. So, barriers to success. What is the hardest aspect to the job? And I guess I'm just going to give my own personal opinion on these ones that we are listing out. Probably the most difficult, and this is from my perspective, is just managing the amount of information and I guess demands that come with, I guess, the engineer's role. And that may change if you're in a different, business. But I guess in consulting, there's a lot of things we have to juggle day to day. And whether that's, our technical understanding, how much time we spend on a particular task, managing a project, managing clients, managing difficult situations. These things we have to encounter day by day. But I think that's also what's part of making the job interesting. You don't really have a boring day. It's not really possible. So I think it's got its positives and negatives, obviously. Personal story on a challenging time. Probably the one for me. And I think there's been a couple of challenging moments. But probably one of the big ones I've had, or it's probably a big learning for myself is, and this is on the job, is just managing my own stress levels. And I will tell you that, and I think it probably comes into most, STEM careers, but there is times of high stress. And I will say in consulting, it can be definitely, that definitely comes around. And I guess it's something that I learned is that you can't try to take on everything yourself. You need to be able to share the load, but also not be too harsh on yourself as well. It's something I probably did for a while when I started and probably still do a little bit. And if you put too much pressure on yourself, you're just going to weigh yourself down. And it's something that will negatively impact you and impact the way you work. Whereas if you can figure out how to share your workload and share your responsibility and realize that there are things out of your control and you shouldn't put yourself down for that, that'll actually alleviate the way you work, and it'll make you feel better as well. Why do some not persist in the industry? That's a good question. I think there's only been a few people that I know of that have actually decided to leave engineering. I think from what I've seen, some of them had other career pursuits that weren't engineering related. So it wasn't necessarily to do with wanting to leave it. It was just that they found a new business or they had another venture that they were, interested in pursuing. And I guess maybe for some, it can be quite demanding, as I've mentioned just before, and maybe some who decided that that's just not for them, or they may want to go into a different role where it may be not so focused on, delivery and managing so many things at once, which comes with consulting. But it doesn't, I guess it varies person by person, and you're always going to have challenging times. It doesn't matter what role and what business you're in. So it just depends, I guess, on the individual. But I guess you just got to ask yourself, do you still enjoy it at the end of the day? Even if you had a bad day, you got to think to yourself, do you enjoy your career? Do you enjoy what you do? I think that's a good one to ask yourself. So barriers within a person's control. So the way I think of this one is, obviously there's a whole lot of things that you can control. For example, I guess your attitude, the way you work, the trust that you build with others, like your reputation. So you can, I guess, build yourself to be known, that you deliver to quality and time, and you do a good job and you're trustworthy. These are all things that you can do that will, help with your success. There's obviously things that are out of your control. So I guess they're ones I would like to mention. For example, You may have difficult people that you have to work with, and that's probably in any workplace, but that is something you can't control. You may have business objectives that change. For example, the market may die off for example, as consultants, the market may die off and there may not be much work in your industry. And so you may just be forced to, or you may be made redundant, and it's not because of your performance or anything, it's simply because there's no work. And that's definitely happened. I mean, when I started at GHD, we just came, the effects of the 2008 financial crisis was still being felt in Australia, and there was not a lot of work going around. So it was kind of just before I joined, there was a lot of redundancies. So that's a definite possibility. And these are things you just can't control at all. But I think looking back up to the barriers within a person's control, that's where you can really focus on yourself and your drive and your learning and experience. And that's something that if you keep pushing forward with that, it's going to bring success. Jon, was there anything you wanted to mention on any of these? Or are you, any thoughts you might have had?
Yeah, Jack, I think there's a lot is impacted by what you've got to do outside of your comfort zone to get through your degree and then go and work. I found leaving home to go to uni a real challenge. And a big factor in that was having a few good friends that you could confide in and say, man, I'm really struggling with this paper or whatever. We're always told that in Auckland Uni, the third year was all full year papers at courses, and they said that's the year you're going to drop out because it's tough. And that's where the best advice someone gave me at the time was that's when you've just got to believe in yourself, do the work, have a couple of good friends you can confide in and just unload some of your concerns, but really back yourself. Because if you love engineering and what you're doing, it's not going to be fun every day. There are going to be some periods where you're like, man, I'm struggling, and recognizing that that's normal. There are days, even with nearly 30 years in the job, I have days now where I'm like, oh man, I'm not enjoying this.
Just this week.
Yeah, but that's normal, and it's really important to have a few good mates that you can just have a chat with. And you'll find when you start working, having a few mentors. I think, Jack, you're probably going to get to that, but having a few mentors that just you can go in and just say, yeah, mate, I'm really struggling with this, or I'm really struggling with this boss. How do I deal with that? Because they've probably seen it, they've probably felt it, and they go, right, here's a coping strategy for this. So really back yourself and have a good support network. It's really important.
Yeah, thanks, Jon. Yeah, I guess I just want to run through some of the ones that I wanted to bring up as well. So some of the barriers, I guess, entry to the industry can be quite difficult. I know that the graduate programs, a lot of the companies put up, to apply for them, and there's like 200 people or even more applying for the roles, and they say they only have maybe 10 or something. I don't know what it is these days, but I know that can be quite a challenge, as well as like the interview process. I know there's multiple interviews, not just one, and then there's the competition. So you put the pressure on yourself because you've got so many people that you're, I guess, competing with. And if I could give any tips on that, not that I can really, but because I did the internship, and I'm really appreciative of that really gave me the, I guess, the edge to get into the graduate program. So I guess if I can give a tip, and if that helps anyone, is that if you can do an internship, even if it's not with a company you want to be with at the end of the day, it's going to help you hugely, because you're showing that, well, first of all, you've done an internship with a company. You can also, in that internship, prove yourself with whoever you're working with. Even if it's not something you want to keep doing, you still want to do a good job, because you can then say, well, look what I did here. I'm looking to now change that, and that's fine. I don't think there's no company is going to look and go, oh, you worked in this industry, that means that we don't want you. It's usually they're looking at what values and traits do you bring. It's not necessarily the exact calculations. You don't have to worry about that. I guess the next one is adjusting to the working environment. that can be obviously a challenge as well. I mean, like I said earlier, I had no idea about an office environment. And the site environment, it's something I only learned sort of recently. And even then, I still don't feel 100% comfortable on sites because I'm not a full-time person who goes out there, and there's contractors who do this stuff day to day, and they have their own sort of ways, and it's all really a learning experience. The best you can do is just show up and do your best. That's what I would sort of say, if that is any good advice. But there's also a couple of the other things like timesheets. That's a pain and it can be quite confusing. And I'd just implore you to look for others in your, other colleagues or peers that might be around that can help you with those if you get confused, or, like, why am I having to record the hours that I do here? It's just a necessity of the job. And like learning the business requirements like health and safety and quality and limits of authority, these things go on and on and on. That's something that you just you try to soak in as much as you can, but it will sort of take some time as well to understand all those. And I think those constantly evolve as well. It's not something you will learn and then it doesn't change. It's those things are changing, and really it's just each company has their own. They're all very similar. It's just something as you get into the workforce that you'll be exposed to, I guess, and that you'll need to obviously learn as you're there. So project demands. So there's the old project management triangle of scope, quality, and cost, the great balance. And I think it doesn't matter what business or role you're in, even if you may not be under a particular project, you'll still be, scored or confined to those three major principles when you're working in any type of engineering role. We don't have unlimited money, so even if you're in an owner, they still have budgets they need to work to, and that is always a balance. But that's not necessarily a challenge. It can be quite rewarding as well. You can see what can be done. And if you control that well, you get good outcomes, which is really cool. I guess the other part is understanding project and client needs. That can be definitely a challenge, and that's something where you would want to look for guidance from your more senior and I guess principal engineers. Especially initially as a graduate, you probably will not be familiar at all with what a client needs. I mean, I'm still learning what clients need, and I'm 6 years in. That will not stop until I finish, my career. I guess other parts, delivering to scope, that can be difficult as well. Once again, looking for help from the more senior people when you first start out, and communication. I mean, we always talk about, and you think it'd be simple, but it really isn't. It's quite a difficult thing if you think about how different everyone is, and the way that they work and the way that they do things. And you'll find when you do projects and you have multidisciplinary people, some do it a different way to others, and communication can be, that's why it's one of the biggest challenges, and it can affect a project hugely. It's something that you always have to work on, and you always have to try to do more. It's still something I always try to do more when I can. But yeah, that's just ongoing. Another one is self-learning experience. Just like when you first start as a graduate, you'll be trying to remember what you did in university. There might be some things that come up and you go, oh, I've seen that before. Try to pull out the textbook. I mean, that's completely normal. We still refer to references. You got to utilize information that's been, engineering is about utilizing science, and it's all written in references and textbooks. That's the purpose. Where I was initially nervous to open a textbook because you think, oh, people are going to say you don't know how to do that, but it's actually, well, everything we do is based on, references, or you maybe look, you need to utilize the knowledge that we have collectively. And part of it is learning on the job. And I guess I see there's a question there about graduate programs, but I will get to that at the end. But yeah, for the graduate programs, a lot of it is learning on the job. And it's about getting that experience in the environment you're in with the team that you're in. Because you're usually in a team, or you probably should be in a team, especially working as an engineer who's not certified. You definitely need to have guidance, as it's not legal for you to be doing it without guidance. But yeah, a lot of your experience and learning will be on the job, roughly 70 to 80% of your time, and then you might have, say, 20 or 10% would be external training that's supported by your company or wherever you work, which would include, conferences or training courses, etc. They're usually quite expensive, so you don't usually have them all the time. But just depending on which company you work for, they'll have different, I guess, curriculums of their graduate program. But like, for example, GHD had a whole lot of training seminars that they did for the graduates over the 2 years, but they're sort of like once every sort of month or 2 months, but they're usually quite valuable, so it is definitely worth doing. And I guess the next one, gaining the right experience from the right people. I think that's a key one. Try to find sort of your mentor, or find people that you are interested in. You can hear what they're doing, you're interested in what they're doing, and try to, I guess, put your hand up. That's what I tried to do when I first started. Is I spoke to everyone in the team. I tried to annoy people as much as I could, but I tried to sort of put my hand up for projects. If it sounded interesting, I would say I'd like to be involved in that. Even if they say no, that's the worst outcome. Well, that's it's not that bad. But usually, or most of the time, or almost every time, because they're always looking for help, they want you to get involved, and then that's how you build your experience in particular tasks and projects. And I guess the next one, challenging yourself to grow, that definitely comes part of putting your hand up as well. That can be quite difficult. Like Jon was saying, get outside your comfort zone. You may hear there's a project or something, you think, oh man, I have no idea how you could do that or how it's done, but I'm really interested in it. Then you should just go for it. Just put your hand up and say, I'd like to try that. Even if you're going to fail, that's how you're going to learn. And it's just something that you're going to have to, that's what I've tried to do myself, and I think it definitely works. But it can be challenging, so just trust in the process. I guess the last one, working with others. So I think it's really important, like building your brand. So like, obviously when you first start as a graduate, no one knows you, or you may only know a few people and they don't really know how you work. But I guess something that I always try to apply is everything I did, no matter how unimportant it looked, I try to do my best at it. And so that anytime anyone asks me to do work, that they know they get a good product or they get a good outcome at the end, no matter how sort of small or insignificant it is. And I guess the other part to that is also, as you go on, you'll learn how others work and how they, fit into a successful project. It's kind of an interesting one because, you'll find that people work very differently. Engineering is not just about doing some calculations, it's how you work in teams and work with others, and how you get projects completed and deliverables done. And that does mean working with teams and working with different people. And you'll find there's a huge range of the way people work and their own quirks. But that's what I think makes the project successful, actually, is that you have such a wide range of views and methods and the way that people do things. And I guess the last one there is how to manage difficult situations. That's something that's not easy. I've had some of my own, and I think it comes from, you just got to think how to handle yourself in those situations. And also realize that you're in a professional setting and you're the bigger person. You need to be the professional person, and the other person, depending on who they are, but they will either be embarrassed or they'll realize afterwards that they've, done the wrong thing. And usually you'll get an apology, which is, depends on the situation, but that does happen. That's just a reality, but it's not often. But it will, you may encounter that in your career. But look, it's all part of the job. But I guess one thing to say is that if you do need to vent on those things, I have used Jon on occasion to vent about things like that. So I think that's where you also rely on your team and your colleagues and your mentors. If you get put in those situations, you let them know, and you also, if you need to vent, you let them know that you're not happy about it. And it's good to share your frustration and get their views on it as well, and how you can handle it better next time, and how you get, how do you handle these difficult situations. Okay, I think we're approaching 4 o'clock already, so I'll try and just power through this bit. So, ingredients for excellence. 2 of the world's top engineers. I think I had 2 names come to mind. A little bit cliche, but you got Elon Musk there, because he's obviously running the CEO of a couple major companies. You got Tesla and SpaceX, and he's actually quoted to say that he spends about 80% of his time actually doing engineering and manufacturing. which I think is pretty cool. So he's not just, he doesn't just sit around doing business, stuff all day. He's actually in there with them and exploring ideas. He's obviously quite successful. And there's also Satya Nadella, if I say his name correctly. And he started out at Microsoft and worked his way up. And I think he was an electrical and computer engineer. I can't remember exactly. But he basically was one of the first people to come up with cloud computing. Well, he's now the CEO of Microsoft. So I think those are pretty good examples of famous engineers for the modern times anyway. Skills that I've used that I've obtained elsewhere, not in engineering. If I think back to, it's quite funny, I actually thought about this a couple of times in the last few years. One of the things that I did have is playing rugby league. I know not everyone will have done that, but just working in that team. But that was a very high pressure environment as well. I mean, everyone's depending on each other. It's like a very team orientated thing. And also having a coach who has a high demands of you, but also, you learn how to take criticism because they're actually wanting you to get better. And there's obviously pressure on everyone. But I found that I had some huge, I guess I'm thankful for my time playing that sport because there's a lot of moments there where I feel like I can take criticism pretty well. And it's because of that. I think that's something that is an outcome from that one. What traits, characteristics, and mindset should you strive for? I think there's sort of an attributes page that we'll get to after this, but I guess some of the key ones is obviously being an engineer, you want to be a bit of a problem solver. Because every day that you're going to be facing problems every day, and that's really what you're doing. But also, I think you need to be able to listen, but you need to be able to understand other people's perspectives and communicate back to them. I guess you need to be able to communicate well with people. I think that's one of the key parts. It's not necessarily just, running the software, getting numbers. It's also communicating the outcomes and how you're going to solve these things. That's actually a huge part of what we do. It probably makes up half of what we do. And I guess mindset, you just want to take on a mindset of learning from your mistakes. You're going to make mistakes, that's normal. But just knowing that, I would just say to not give up. I think that's something that you just need to push. Like, for example, I still face challenges myself of, can I do this problem or whatever? But you just got to keep pushing yourself and you'll realize that you actually can do more than you think. But it's something that you sort of develop over time. It's not something you can just know. Degrees and qualifications. I mean, if you want to practice as an engineer, you have to complete a bachelor's of engineering. And then from there, you will eventually need to get certified. If you want to sign off on your own, well, you will eventually, if you're signing off on designs and drawings, etc., which is usually after around 5 years, roughly, where you'll have to, basically, there's a couple of methods currently. Engineers Australia is one method where you basically provide experience and evidence of your competency in I think 16 different areas of engineering. And then they assess you and you do an interview with other registered engineers in the industry, and they decide whether or not you can become certified. So I guess I want to quickly cover on this attributes page, graduate attributes. It's a quite interesting one. So what I've done, I looked through all of these and they're all definitely relevant in engineering and any business you're in. But I guess I've picked one out of each column that I thought was sort of ones that I sort of lean towards most, I guess. So the first one, problem solving, demonstrates curiosity to learn and solve problems by breaking down complex issues into small tasks. So I think that one's pretty key for an engineer. If you don't like problem solving, you might not like the job because most days it's just problem solving. On the next one, learns from mistakes. That's one I definitely lean towards, and it's something that I think it's allowed me to, I've built resilience from that, I think, is that I know that I know that I've made mistakes in the past, but I know I will learn from them. That's the key part, is being able to accept that. Next one, attention to detail. I think that's where if you have that ability to pay attention to detail in projects or for what a client's asking for, that really makes you stand out from the crowd, I think. And you'll find that a lot of, and you can see it from other work that's been completed. We work on projects where we're now fixing up something because someone else didn't pay attention to detail. So it's something that will make you stand out from the crowd, I believe. The next one, I think being accountable is extremely important. This comes back to, if you do make a mistake, you need to own up to it. Everyone makes mistakes. It's human. And I think being able though to actually, be honest and truthful and say, yeah, that's me, put my hand up. And I think that's something as well that I might have, learned from my earlier days in sports. You put your hand up when you're the one who's made that error or whatever. But it actually builds on that to say, look, I've made a mistake there, but how can we fix it? And that's something that I always, try or strive to do. Communication. So active listener, I think that's something that you definitely need. You need to have that ability to listen to others and listen to clients, listen to stakeholders, listen to everyone, not just the important people, but even the people on the ground, like operators, managers, CEOs, whatever. It doesn't matter who they are. You should treat them all with the same level of respect and listen to what they have to say, because they all have their own insights and they have really valuable knowledge that you need to take on board. And I guess the last one, and this is more of from my experience, empowering others. And I think that comes from the fact that I'm really grateful that CareerTrackers empowered me and GHD empowered me in terms of, like, Jon is a great example. Like, Jon was in my interview for the internship and he was probably looking at me going, oh, look at this kid. And I'm looking at him going, oh, I wonder if you'll even think I'm worth it. You know what I mean? Like, it's about those who give you the opportunities. And I think that's something I want to do, is give back and empower others as well. That's just something that, I guess it's from my own experience that I will try to do and strive for as well. Jon, did you have anything else you wanted to comment on under this?
Jack, that was a pretty good summary. Yeah, I agree with you on the being accountable. In engineering, we generally work as a team, and the quicker you can say, oops, I think I might have used the wrong data for that calculation or whatever, the quicker the whole team moves on. In a good team, it's you're not blamed, right? It's around saying, yep, this is I made the best decision at the time. It might not have been the right decision looking back, but let's correct it and move on. And that's a really important attribute. The listening and various things as well. I mean, there was a question around networking. What I remind my colleagues is that you are dealing with a range of people in business at a range of levels, and you're part of that network. And so establish contact, treat everyone with respect, and establish contacts at your peer level, because in 10 years' time, that person that you've followed through and kept in contact with might be the person who's issuing tenders for a big client, and you want to be that working with them. So it's that respect and maintaining contact with people. It's really important. And even as a grad, when your boss takes you along to a business meeting, it's the same as an interview. Be professional. Listen. Show your professionalism in being prepared for the meeting, having the right answers to questions, etc., and backing what your colleagues say, because you're all working as a team, and these attributes here all feed into that, and that is, I think, one of the key differences between successful engineers and people that maybe don't fit quite so well. And I'm sure we've all met them where you're not quite sure on that person's role, and then you see others and you go, yeah, actually, I like working with that person because they're a person too. And that teamwork, respect and integrity are probably the key. And in terms of your diverse backgrounds, it's also respecting yourself. You're part of that equation. Back yourself, as Jack said. You front up to some things, and if I've asked Jack to prepare a presentation for me for a client, I'm doing so because I have faith and trust that he's going to do a good job, and he does. And your bosses will actually, a lot of them will act like that too. They'll be going, right, you have a crack at that. So you get lots of opportunities like that. So back yourself, respect yourself. That's really important. That's probably all I've got to say on that one, Jack.
Yeah, thanks, John. I think I'll just quickly, we're probably going a little bit over time, so sorry for anyone. If anyone wants to leave, that's okay, but I'll power through this.
No problem, Jack. And I've just just to make a comment on that before you continue with that last bit. If anyone does want to leave, understandable. I've included a link in the chat. If you can just make sure you take that survey before you go ahead and leave. I can see that most people are still on, so you must be doing a really great job, Jack.
I'll still be interesting.
If presuming you're happy to stick around after you get through this last bit to answer any questions, because there's some really great questions in the chat. But if anyone needs to leave, please take that survey on your way out. But otherwise, enjoy the rest of this because we'll continue.
Thanks, Adam. So yeah, I guess this next one was personal experiences that benefited me. I think I touched on it earlier about my internship that I got to do with GHD. And I also did, just thinking back before that, I actually took a sort of, did a getting out of the comfort zone type thing. And I took a internship role down in central New South Wales for, I think it was over a period of 8 weeks, which was completely out of my comfort zone at the time. So I was driving like 4 hours south to go stay down there and work for a week, and then I'd come home on the weekends where I could, which is probably not a huge distance for some, probably living very remote, but for me, yeah, it was like going away from family. It was only for a short period, but that was a challenge. But it actually set me up really well for the GHD internship because I could utilize the things I learned from that and the experience I had from that to assist me in getting the internship at GHD. So it was one of those situations where I didn't necessarily want to work at that place for, as a graduate, but it set me up for the next job. So yeah. What experience projects should you seek an internship? I guess that'll come down to what are you interested in. But like I said, again, everything you do, or at least this is how I approached it, everything you do, you try to do your best and you try to deliver like a very good product for anyone that you're working with, because you never know what you may come back and work with them again. You may only work with someone for a very simple task, but what you deliver to them will actually be, I guess, their perspective on what you can do, even if it's something very simple. They will appreciate it if it's done very well and all organized, and they'll look and go, wow, okay, I know that person can handle themselves even for a very simple task. And that'll help you for anything bigger, or you may want to get on a project with them. They might say, yeah, let's get you involved because I know you can do simple things, so let's see how you do more challenging things. And that's obviously all part of the learning process. What relationships, mentors? I mean, that's definitely building a relationship in your team, building trust with other team members, and that's all comes from what I've said just above. And trying to find mentors, I guess, comes down to who do you look up to, and who do you have trust in, and who do you work well with. They're all good factors for finding a mentor. Even if you really want just a particular person, you can always speak to them and say, would you be able to help me out? It doesn't have to be like any official thing. It's just sort of creating a relationship there to help guide your career. What commitments do students need to make to themselves today? That's a great question. I think if you're really, this is my perspective, if you really want to get into engineering, I think you need to, like John was saying, back yourself and just realize that you're going to have challenging times, but it's such a rewarding career. I think you really need to think about, do you enjoy it, and do you want to do it? Because that's, for any job, you need to think about that. But I think, if you are keen to do it, you need to back yourself. You need to put yourself into it. So if it means that you've got an exam coming up, it means you do that extra bit of study, or you have some assignments that you weren't too confident on, you just try you try to get any extra edge on that. You just the more you put yourself into the unknown, the more you will learn and come out of it better. I think that's the advice I could give on that. But I know there's some good questions in the chat as well that I'll try to answer around university time. And resources, I mean, there's professional journals. If you Google, there's Civil Engineering and Concrete Institute. There's lots of different journals and references you can use. A lot of them require memberships, but I think through university you can get access to those. So just do a quick Google on things you might want to look at. Like, for example, dams. You might try to find some of the journals around it. There's like hydropower journals, are really interesting. They show some amazing projects, things that are happening in the industry. Think about what you might want to do. Like, do you want to look at bridges, or do you want to design vehicles? Airplanes, whatever. Like, try to find journals relevant to that and explore that if you can. And I guess, websites, I mean, just browsing the internet, you can find lots of things. There's forums, there's Reddit, which has great subreddits on different subjects of engineering. You just have to find it, which contain, people's experiences. So, just utilizing what's out there. Suggested study habits. I guess, like I mentioned, I had a turning point at uni, whereas I would, initially just study if I thought it was worth it. And then after the turning point, I had a big, an A1 or A2 calendar on the wall with every single subject, course, like lecture, tutor, tutorial, assignment, exam, all written up. I had lead on dates, everything. I decided to go all out. I decided if I can't pass engineering with the greatest planning, then obviously it's just not meant to be. But I literally put everything out, and I had a calendar on the wall. I had study habits was, if there's something coming up, I'm studying for it. I'm going to put every bit of energy I have into it. And it meant sacrificing time with friends. And I just had to say no to things because I thought, no, I need to do this. And when I finish it, it'll be done. And once uni's over, it does get, it is a relief. Working is obviously, it's a different world. And it's an ongoing challenge, but it is definitely different to those uni, pressures. And once you get through it, you'll be more confident too, because you've completed it and you've done a good job. All right. Questions, discussion.
Hey, Jack. So
yes.
Actually, there was a Chloe Brown. I might actually invite you to come in and share. I think it was a kind of question/comment. This is back to when you were talking about how engineering came about. Chloe, are you still there? Maybe she's away from the computer at the moment. We might come back to her afterwards. There's a question on what is a graduate program like. I know you talked about getting into graduate programs, but do you want to make a brief comment on what was it like in the grad program? Yeah,
sure. I guess the intent of the graduate program is usually to obviously onboard you initially. So there's usually a couple of days you'll spend when you first started a company where they go through inductions, they go through how the business works and your expectations as a graduate, and I guess career development. They spend 3 or 4 days at GHD doing that, and introducing you to your peers. Obviously everyone who's starting with you, so you can build an initial network. But usually the programs, they are ongoing 1 or 2 years, and I know in GHD as an example, it usually means that there's events that are for your graduate cohort. So, it's usually monthly from what I can remember. And you'll do either a training session together or a team building exercise or, skills development. So it's usually just an ongoing session that you get together. But your actual learning and everything will be on the job and be in the team that you're in and working with the people that you work with as part of that team. So I wouldn't think of the graduate program as being what will make you a good engineer. I think it's just there to assist you along the way. Becoming a good engineer.
Can I add something to that, Jack?
Sorry, go on, John.
Yeah, just while there's formal training programs in a lot of organisations, don't underestimate the value of your own enthusiasm and also talking to your bosses and your other senior engineers around you and saying, hey, if this sort of thing comes up, I'd really like to do whatever the task is. Because a senior person in an engineering firm is generally really busy, and they're actually generally looking for people who are keen to do a particular task, and they don't know if you haven't told them. So don't underestimate the value of that in the on-the-job training. I've had some of my colleagues who've gone to some really great things because they've taken the courage to tell a senior person, hey, I'd really like to work on that tunnel over there. If a job comes up in it, can you keep me in mind? And it's surprising how many of these things happen. So speak up and tell your bosses what opportunities you'd like, because they don't know if you don't tell them. That's really important.
Those are really great comments, and I think that hopefully resonates with a lot of interns who might sometimes feel like there's a lot out of their control in an internship, like managers generate the workflow and get to decide what projects you work on, and you're in this kind of specified environment. But actually what you're saying there is there's a lot that's in the student's control with seeking support, seeking help, and following up people and being proactive. I think those are really great comments that you share. The next question came from Lydia, and I think that this came up, Jon, when you were talking about your experiences of being stretched. And Lydia said, how do you avoid burnout? What would you do once you have burnout? So let's say you realized there's a lot on, there's a lot of pressure, and you're really burnt out from it all. How do you deal with that in those moments?
Sure. So sorry, Jon.
It's a really good question there. Because as Jack will know, the dams industry is really busy right now. And as Jack also knows, in my particular role as a senior person in the group, I think I'm about 170% committed to jobs, i.e. I've got 3 days extra work I've got to try and do per week, and it's actually not achievable, right? And so it's recognising your own limits. You have to have a work-life balance. In uni, you'll have times when you've got to smash out the study, and then you have breaks, right? So it's a bit on and off at uni. In a workplace, it's about recognising your own limits and going, well, this could go for 25 years. If I don't set boundaries, I'm going to be dead. and so it also was about being able to discuss that with your colleagues. A process that I use often, as Jack knows because he's been in this role, is once you're a couple of years out of uni, you actually have enough experience to look after a graduate. Jack's there right now. He's got a couple of juniors that he's looking after, and actually having people to help is a really good process on dealing with burnout, where you can sit there and say, I can't do this week. Hey, Jack, can you help me with this? And it gets back to that comment earlier around telling your senior colleagues what you want to help with. And they'll go, oh, I remember Jake over there. He was really keen to have a crack at this formula, this calculation. I want to go and see if he's keen to help me. And you'll actually find, even when you graduate, within a very short while, being able to have someone help you is a really big thing in managing burnout. And recognising that, I know some people are quite particular and they want to try and finish all their tasks in a day before they finish for the day. That's almost impossible in our job. There's always stuff on your to-do list at the end of the day, and it's recognising that you can't do everything as well. And so, as Jack said, he was quite hard on himself. I know he was, because I could see it. I can't do this and I can't do that. It's about getting real. Even with 29 years experience in it, in the engineering, there are days I'm going, I honestly don't know how to solve this problem. I'm going to need some help. Or, oh man, I can't do this today. I'm going to need some help. That's really important. Hope that sort of answers that one.
Yeah, and it sounds like what you're saying, Jon, in a nutshell, is seeking help and support really never ends. It kind of continues, even for someone with all the experience that you've got under your belt, that getting help and support will continue basically forever. And it's something that the students should really get used to.
And remember, it's a team. And there are two key aspects on these, like on the screen at the moment is Cotter Dam. Now, I was involved in the early stages for that, and you look at that and you go, how am I going to do that? Well, for a start, there's 25 other designers working with you, and you can share the load. And the other thing is, a huge task starts with one step. What are they? There's a saying that goes like, if you want to travel fast, go alone. If you want to travel far, go with friends. And that's never truer in these mega projects. You want to do the job, you've just got to keep taking steps, and you've got to have people to help. And it doesn't matter how experienced you are, that remains true.
Yeah, great words. I'm going to move on to the next question from Gordon. Has said, have you ever thought about doing a master's while working, and asking for both yours, Jack's, and Jon's perspective on if you think that there's much value in doing a master's?
I guess I'll answer first. I have considered it, but it's just me, it's my personal choice. It's not, I know there's a lot of people who have done that. But I am just very much, well, when I finished uni, I had enough. And I really wanted to get into the workforce, but yeah, I'm really keen I'm getting project experience. So I guess I'm still like learning technically, and obviously if I did masters, it would definitely develop my technical skills more, but I'm trying to build those technical skills while also getting that really good project experience. That's just my perspective, and others may have a different, opinion on that. And I think it's only because we have such, at the moment, that what I'm involved in is really quite, great projects. So yeah, that's my main reasoning. But I don't know, Jon, if you had anything to add. But I know that there's been, sorry, you go, Jon.
Yeah, I asked one of my mates at uni, his dad was an engineer. I asked him about this nearly 30 years ago, and it was because it was the 91, the GFC back then, and his advice was a master's is helpful. A PhD is only helpful in consulting if you intend to work in a really specialised area. So master's is useful. He also said that it's the work-life balance, burnout thing. If you try and do everything at once, you're going to stretch yourself too thin, and you're either going to burn out or you're not going to do it as well as you could. So you've got to balance that. Some people can. I think personally myself, I would struggle working and doing a master's at the same time, like part-time. But other people are different. They can pull it off. I know they can. So yeah, that's my 2 cents worth.
And really the final question in here is, and I'm going to sort of paraphrase this one a little bit, it's from Chloe, asking about networking. And I know that you've mentioned in your internship, Jack, that it's a vital way to build a network. And the really question is about what advice would you have for students to build a network across the industry? If you have any advice on the types of things that the students should be doing to go about building that network and how you see that as being important.
Sure. I guess one of the things that makes like that question, I remember asking that when I was at university, so I don't know if it's like a pre-work level saying how do you network before you're in the industry. Is that I find that is quite difficult. Like you have to try and go along to those events, and I guess anything that your university is doing to try and meet people, but that is a little bit of a challenge. But then talking
maybe there's also a comment in there, sorry to interrupt you, around think about when you're at the gala dinner and at LDI, and you've got so many other students and so many other professionals, particularly at these big forums. How do you take advantage of those moments?
Well, you just have to go up and you have to take a leap and actually introduce yourself and just get talking to them. I mean, I went to a recent DAMS conference, and I'm certainly not very experienced compared to some of the people that have been working in the industry for like 50 years. And I've gone up to people and just had to say hello and try to introduce myself. And I want to meet these people, it's never easy. But most of the time, and remember that people love talking about themselves. I mean, I just talked about myself for about an hour. All you have to do is like introduce yourself and listen to what they have to say, and you can just ask simple questions. I think that's the most challenging part of it. But yeah, I guess the other part is trying to find the right people. You got to put yourself in the right situations. But when you're in working, I think the other part to that is when you're doing projects, and especially as a graduate, you're not going to be well known at all, right? you need to ask whoever the project manager is or your manager, if they've got a client meeting, you ask, can I go along and can I write the minutes for the meeting? So you go along to that meeting, you introduce yourself to everyone at the start, you get to know everyone, and then they start to see a face, they put a face to the name. And then you're involved in that project, your name might be on a report or on a calculation. And they'll go, oh, I saw that person, they're at the introduction meeting. And then over time, you'll start to build that network and the clients will recognize who you are. And then it gets to the point where you get a few years experience, you start managing projects, and the client already knows who you are. The company can put you forward as a project manager and they go, oh, I know that face. It's not some random person they haven't seen for the first 3 years. It's about trying to get involved in that client-facing side. And the only way to do that is to talk to your managers and say, can you just let me come along and I'll take the minutes, I'll take the notes. And I still do that. But yeah, I think that's a great way of networking as well. It's also delivering on your projects and everything, but that's a great initial way, especially when you're very junior.
Great words. And
that's probably a really good piece of advice there, Jack. And that's an easy way of doing it as well. So tell your boss to do, you'd like to attend that meeting even as an observer, but even better, just say, hey, I'll take minutes. Because then your boss is going to go, oh, great, I don't have to take minutes, someone else will.
Yeah, they'll be happy.
Also, try that on with the conferences or whatever. Just tell your boss, I'd like to go to that conference, even if it might mean, in some cases, oh look, if the company can pay for the conference fees, I'll take leave. And tell your boss, I'm a bit nervous about the whole networking thing. Can you introduce me to a few key clients and that? And look, most colleagues would love to, it's just part of having a conversation with clients and other industry professionals. Oh, here's Jack. He's the grad that's working for me, and it flows from there. So ask for help. That's really important.
Brilliant. You guys have been incredibly generous with your time and your wisdom, and we thank you so much. We're gonna round it out there. Thank you so much for signing up and giving us this session, Jack and Jon. Really appreciate it. And thank you for the rest of you for sticking around. Clearly, these guys have been pretty great in sharing their thoughts and wisdom. As I've shared in the channel on the chat, I've included a link. Please, on your way out, give us some feedback on this session before you leave. It's just a quick 2 minutes. We'd really appreciate it. Thanks again so much, Jack and Jon. It's been a pleasure to have you.
Thanks very much, Adam. I hope everyone enjoyed it. Hope it was useful, or hope you got something out of it.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks, Adam. Look, as well, if anyone's got a burning question that you haven't asked today, we are quite approachable. Just drop an email or something to Adam and he can ask Jack and me. We're also quite busy, as you probably heard, so it might be a day or two before we get back. So don't be upset if it takes a bit of a delay, but absolutely we welcome questions from you.
And I've given them all your LinkedIn profiles before the session, so don't be surprised if you get a whole heap of requests on there.